This is not a story about the end of the world. This is a story about what happens when humanity realizes the end was only the beginning. Imagine witnessing the last 10 minutes of Earth's existence, not in a simulation, not in a predictive model, but in real time. The sky doesn't darken. It fractures like glass. The sun doesn't set. It stops behaving like a star obeying physics. The oceans don't rise. They begin rewriting coastlines as if the planet is being erased layer by layer. And in that exact moment, every government on Earth activates a project that never officially existed. The Ark. One ship, one engineered world, one chance for survival, and less than a fraction of a second to decide who gets to continue existing. But this is where the illusion of the end begins to collapse, because the planet didn't start dying in a moment. It started failing silently. At first, scientists noticed small irregularities in solar activity. Not explosions, not flares, something deeper, as if the sun was changing its internal structure in ways physics could no longer fully explain. Then Earth's magnetic field began to weaken, not an immediate collapse, but unstable fluctuations, as if something was interfering with the system from outside. Satellites started failing in patterns that made no sense. Navigation systems drifted by fractions of coordinates that kept increasing. Then the oceans responded, not with storms at first, but with imbalance. Water levels shifted unevenly across continents. Tides stopped matching predictive models, as if Earth was slowly losing synchronization with reality. Still, governments avoided the word catastrophe because once you say it out loud, you lose control. So instead, they activated the Ark, a ship the size of a city. But calling it a ship was misleading. It wasn't built to travel. It was built to replace Earth. Inside it existed a controlled ecosystem, artificial forests, closed water cycles, simulated weather systems, recreated gravity fields, biological population control systems for long-term survival. But there was one brutal limitation. Less than 1% of humanity could be saved, and the selection process was never publicly explained, because there was no explanation that could survive moral logic. Engineers, scientists, medical personnel, genetic diversity profiles, and a hidden category no one talked about. People chosen not for what they were, but for what the system needed them to become. When the leaks finally reached the public, society didn't collapse immediately. It hesitated first, like a system buffering before breaking. Then it broke instantly. Cities didn't fall from war. They fell from realization. That survival had already been decided without consent, that the future had been divided into those who leave and those who are left behind to witness it. Airports became dead zones of impossible hope. Roads turned into permanent migration flows with no destination. Communication systems overloaded, not with data, but with final human attempts to be heard. And during all of this, the sun continued changing. Now visibly unstable, now undeniably wrong. The final 72 hours began when atmospheric systems stopped behaving predictably. Storm systems formed in geometric patterns. Lightning strikes occurred in synchronized intervals, as if weather itself had been rewritten. The Ark was moved into launch sequence, not because everything was ready, but because nothing would ever be ready again. Evacuation zones were sealed, access points locked, military enforcement activated, not to control the world, but to contain its final reaction. And still, people tried to reach the gates, not out of logic, but out of refusal to accept statistical extinction. A mother holding a child, a man running with nothing but a name and a direction, people screaming at systems that no longer had authority over reality. And above them all, the Ark stood silent, waiting, not for permission, but for timing. T-10 hours, then 1 hour, then minutes. The planet was no longer stable enough to maintain predictable survival. Even the concept of safe zones stopped meaning anything. And then launch began. Engines ignited not with sound, but with pressure that bent the horizon. The atmosphere reacted like it was being torn open, and for the first time in human history, Earth was seen from outside while still alive, not as a home, but as a collapsing system. Inside the Ark, there was no calm, no relief, no victory, only silence, because everyone understood the same truth. They were not survivors. They were witnesses who escaped too early. Earth shrank behind them, not disappearing, but transforming. And then it happened. The moment no simulation predicted correctly, Earth transmitted a signal. At first, it was dismissed as interference, then confirmed as structured, then identified as repeating. The impossible part was not the signal itself, it was its origin, Earth. But Earth should have been silent, completely silent. No infrastructure, no systems, no surviving transmission capability. And yet the signal repeated, stronger with every cycle, more precise, more intentional. Inside the Ark, debate didn't start. Fear did, because this was not a malfunction, it was communication, and communication requires intent. The ship's trajectory systems were recalculated, not toward distance, but toward origin. Because if Earth was speaking, then Earth was not finished. Years passed, then decades. The Ark evolved from an escape vessel into a closed civilization, a new human ecosystem built in artificial space. Children were born who knew Earth only as archived data, images, sound recordings, fragments of a lost origin. To them, Earth was no longer a place. It was mythology, backed by physics. But the signal never stopped. It adapted, evolved, became more structured over time. And then came a second truth no one was ready for. The signal was not random. It was directional. It was aimed at them, which meant Earth wasn't just transmitting, it was responding. And if Earth was responding, then something on Earth was still aware. The Ark changed course again, not back home, but toward uncertainty, because for the first time since launch, the question changed. Not, did Earth die? But, what is still alive down there? The final sequence shows the Ark slowly turning in deep space, a massive artificial world rotating toward a point of origin that should not exist anymore. And beneath it, the signal continues. Not fading, not dying, waiting. And if that signal is real, then humanity never escaped the end of the world. It only escaped the moment it understood what the end actually was.